Hello, friends, and welcome to another of our American Mussar Community weekly gatherings. This week will be our second week exploring the soul trait of loving kindness. We will begin the way we always do with a short meditation. We do this to both clear our minds, um, and to help us drop into a sacred space. Okay, so I invite you to relax and close your eyes and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold, and inhale through the mouth and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And as you go at your own pace, if words should come into your head, just observe them and let them pass, like watching a car move past on the road. Now is not the time for solving problems. Right now, all you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Hello, Harry. Welcome. Hello, Susan. Welcome. Nice to see you both. So let's get started. There we go. So the question is, how did loving kindness show up for you last week? Were there particular opportunities? We spent a lot of time last week, for those of you who are here, talking about going above and beyond what is requirement. What is required? Did a challenge come up where you felt maybe I should be doing some loving kindness here, but it wasn't sort of, it was hard to do? Or if you weren't here, if you just want to kind of share about your Mussar practice, that will be fine too. I'm going to stop the share and we will get started with Bonnie.
So, before we start answering your question, I realized during the week that we didn't talk about loving kindness to ourselves,
Mm,
self-care. And because I'm looking at 4 weeks worth of mail
mm,
and sitting on the floor because I couldn't deal with it on my desk. So I figured it was easier to pick up one piece off the floor. But I would love us to be able to talk about that. Um, but in response to your real question, not my put in question, um, the two things that I did, and I did consciously, and Sue is on the Zoom, is that I reached out to my East Coast friends when I saw what the weather was like
mm,
and what was going on. My cousin, my sister, and my friends in Boston. Um, More than I normally do, because when I was in Cleveland last week and it was 5 degrees and it was 7 below 0, and I posted it, I thought it was cold till I saw Sue's post of being like 37 degrees below 0 or
ooh,
something. Um, So I almost wanted to take my post down because I was ashamed of it. But I really did reach out to the East Coast people. That was the first thing. The second thing is I am so aware, and I think it was because I was not just a classroom teacher, but head of school, that supervisors only hear negative things, or more times than not, they hear negative things. And I have made it a point, my kids have seen it, that either I'm on the phone, I ask to speak to a supervisor, and what I get from the representative is what's wrong. And my comment almost always is nothing. And on a scale of 1 to 10, you hit a 20 over you know, hit it out of the ballpark. And I want your supervisor to know that. And they are very surprised. And so I really picked that up because I'm doing so much traveling and I'm working with different companies that I really need to do that
Mm,
because I think that it's really something that's important to me. I don't really care if other people don't, but I do. So, I mean, I think it would be nice. I know as a head of school, I would announce anything that was good because when there was a problem, it was mine. Didn't
yeah.
matter. It was mine.
Thank you, Bonnie. And that's a great example of going above and beyond kind of what is required to speak to someone's supervisor to praise them. And it's also important for those of us who are parents or in leadership positions to let other people see you doing the act because it's modeling behavior. Like at we have religious school on Sunday mornings at my synagogue, and at some point they send all the kids in to wash their hands before snack. So I go in and I wash my hands with them because why shouldn't the rabbi, why shouldn't any of the adults be washing their hands if kids need to wash their hands? Because if I'm not washing my hands and then I'm eating a cookie, they're not stupid, they see that. And when it comes to these little behavioral things, it makes a big difference. I do also want to respond to your early part about loving kindness towards the self, and that is very important. And it's especially important if you're on the spectrum of having too much loving kindness, where you're doing too many things for other people and not doing enough self-care, not taking care of what you need. So you are spot on. That is absolutely a critical issue. Sue, and I do want to say hi to Nancy. Nancy, I've missed you. It is so nice to see you today. Sue.
Nancy, nice to see you.
Hmm.
I've also been absent. But okay, so Bonnie mentioned the cold. Yeah, but I'm in Minneapolis, and as many of you know, it's unspeakable, horrible, and it's minus 22. So we're dealing with a lot. And one of the things, Bonnie, you said kind of resonated with me because you said, you saw my post and, I said, what, minus 22. And then you felt like you shouldn't be posting, right? And the hard part about this loving kindness is that a lot of us feel like we want to do all of these things and we're doing what we can to help the situation in Minneapolis.
Hmm.
But there's this guilt that I feel like, am I doing enough? Or, I'm not marching and other people are marching. Um, but focusing on loving kindness and what I've done is what I've done is I've funded more GoFundMe's than I've ever funded in my life because everyone has a story about a person that can't get out, you know, can't leave their home and they're not working and these are all true stories and they need to be helped. So I'm giving them money. I mean, it sounds kind of trite in a way, I don't know. I mean, there are other people that are doing so much more, but I think what I'm working on is saying I do what I can do and being okay with that. And I'm doing these acts of loving kindness in the way that I can do them and what works for me. Um, so that was the first thing. And then I've had my father-in-law died and we had a Shiva this week.
Mm.
And so the act that I did was organize that for my husband who was in Massachusetts. And I said, okay, we're going to have a Shiva here. And I organized that. And I think that's a supreme act of loving kindness to organize a Shiva and to invite people to come. Um, but it just feels like it's very heavy. So many things. The weather, the ice, the little ice here being here. And Minnesotans, it's amazing. We're very strong. We're communities are helping communities, and I feel really proud at this moment to be a Minnesotan, to be part of that. But it's very heavy. So I'm trying to balance, and then you talk about self-care. Like, where is that in all of this? I mean, we're rushing to help other people. So I'm a little bit scattered today about my thoughts, but that's it.
Well, first I want to say we're so sorry for your loss, Sue, and for your husband's loss. And it is a wonderful thing to do to organize the Shiva. And gosh, you are going through an awful lot, you know, on the personal, political, environmental, fronts. That is a lot. So just listening with an open heart, and we're all here supporting you. I can also relate to kind of the rush. It's I can relate to the comparisons, which are always, difficult, and one of these phrases that comes out is we don't want to have, there's no ladder of suffering. It's sort of like 4 degrees is cold. -22 is ridiculously cold. So, but they're all, they're all cold. But I was just reminded, as I've occasionally talked about, Rachel and I were in Tel Aviv on October 7th. And on October 8th, we were helping pack boxes of goods. And this woman we met from our hotel, she's running here, she's running there, she's doing this. She couldn't pack them quickly enough. And I said to her, this is a marathon. This is not going to be over today. And we have to pace ourselves for how we respond to
Yeah.
this. And there may come a time when the frenetic energy is needed, but that wasn't the time. And she totally did not appreciate my comment. But nonetheless, I think the lesson for all of us, though, is to really, it's always a balance. And we're never going to get it perfectly. And we're just doing the best we can, as Sue said, doing what we can do. And I think it's wonderful that you're giving yourself space to try to be okay with that. And that's important. Wendy and then Frank.
Yes, Sue, that was wonderful to honor your husband and your father-in-law that way. I mean, Mussar, it gives me a good feeling just to know you. Last week we had the list of actions, and I mean, I have a confession to make because I love the list of actions, and I'm always going, oh yeah, I want to do that, I want to do that, and I usually pick one, and then Zoom goes off, and I walk out the door, and I never think about it again. But things come up that apply to Mussar during the week. This time, no, not so much. It said forgiveness out of loving kindness. And I mean, I didn't see that just in a bold. It was like in red, bold, with fireworks. And is this what you need to do? I hear this. Is this what you need to do? I know I need to do that. There are these two people. They're not related. So I went out of the room, and the first thing I heard was, "Are you ready to do that?" I'm like,
Mm,
I'm talking to God now, and I'm like, no, of course I'm not ready to do that. And I forgive people easily. It's always come easily to me. So to have these two people weighing on my heart now, one for about both of them for about a year. And so then I heard, "Is your heart ready? Are you ready?" I'm like, I'd like to be. That might not have been a good answer because I actually did get into a position where I just I had to do this and just for my own good, but other people too. And I don't know if anybody would really know about it or not, but um, just one was a person who actually go to our temple. So when I see this person at the temple, I always go, oh no, it's kind of it's a drag. But then this person has done some things that are not really, I want to say kosher, but that's not really a term. Just probably not um, uh, appropriate, not appropriate. So this person then sent an email to me that was inappropriate. And it was not just about me, it was about it would affect the entire temple. I said, okay, this is
So
difficult.
Wendy, just to maybe, we get that it's a difficult situation, just in fairness to everyone. We could,
So, well,
yeah.
what ended up happening is that I did see her at temple, and I just, what can I do? And the only thing I can do is smile at this person right now. That's all I've got. And so that's all I did. And I realized, like you said, Greg, about the steps, you know, the steps, it's a rung of the ladder, so it'll get
Yeah.
there. The other one did too, but I won't take the time with that one.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. And I'm sorry for if I cut your story short. But that's great. We just have to take one small step in that direction. And that's like my Maimonides says about teshuva, about repentance. And I'm not saying this is the same thing, but it's like it means you behave differently. It doesn't say behave perfectly. So that's a really important step. Thank you for sharing that. Frank.
Yeah, I like to start with self-care because that's an important thing that Bonnie mentioned. Uh, I think for me, taking care of myself is comes first because otherwise I can't do the things I want to do, need to do. And whether it's sleeping or eating right or exercising
Accessibility shortcut.
is very much part of my daily life. Um, the other thing that's happening is the last week has been a lot of snow, a lot of cold here, a lot of things closed. This is Louisville, Kentucky. And one of the things that I've been doing for many years, as I was walking back from an outdoor activity, usually walking in the street where there's no snow or ice, um, there was an elderly gentleman coming my way. And like I've said, I've done this for many years now. And he let me know that he has some needs. And what I do is I have a street tips booklet and a McDonald's gift certificate. And what I do is I just, give the person. And then what I do is and I've been doing this for many years, is ask for a blessing. Tell them that in my own life, there's challenges. And often, I mean, not often, always, I get some kind of a blessing.
Mm,
And this time he put his hands over my head to give
mm,
his blessings. And it was a perfect Christian blessing, and I just loved every word of it.
mm,
Um, I feel that it's a little we can do for for not just taking, well, not just giving, but taking back.
mm,
Um, Also, a very close friend died recently, and I just talked to his widow, a friend, just to reached out. And another friend that's kind of a shut-in in some ways, and I reached out to him and talked with him at length. Didn't hurry our conversation. Um, I think with this kind of weather, greeting people on the street whenever you can is really important
mm.
because you don't know where people are going and where they're coming from. So I've been doing that. Um, So those are some of the things that's been going on here.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you for sharing that. And so I love that idea of like sometimes people offer a blessing, but I think asking for a blessing is really special. It's very empowering to the other person. Um, let's see, Martin, I think you are up next.
Yes, I'm on my iPhone and I just checked in. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So there was some reference to Bonnie. I just joined in. I don't know what Bonnie said, but I just heard people reference. But my comment that I would like to make regarding, we're talking about loving kindness, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's this past week, my comment, it's very inspirational thinking about loving kindness. And I was thinking of a situation, this happened last year, where I did an act, but it was out of selfishness, not out of loving kindness. But it turned out after I did the act, the recipient, she thought, Martin, that was such a loving kindness that you did.
Mm.
So you never know what's going on. So anyway, just I thought it was just interesting how it was out of selfishness and it turned out to be her reaction, and we have a great relationship. So anyway, you never know how things are going to work out, I guess, my comment. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's, I mean, one of the principles of 12-step groups is fake it till you make it. And I learned from my friend Henry Vogel that the Mussar equivalent is fake it until you awake it. So,
Sure, yeah. And then just a quick item in my running club. I had to go back, and so I was out away from the group. And one of the group members came up to me, ran back with me. He says, "Martin, are you going to join us?" And to me, that felt like also an act of loving kindness. Martin, we want.
absolutely.
And I mean, it can be something big. It can be the smallest thing, and the smallest thing is also huge. That was my reaction to that. So good.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I had a small thing that I did this last week that you just reminded me of. I was coming out of my doctor's office. I got the stitches out of my hand, no more big bandage, recovery going well. And there was a woman who was walking very, very slowly towards the door. And it was kind of cold and windy. And so I just held the door for her. And it took her about 30 seconds to get there. But she said, "Thank you. I really appreciate it." And then the person who was coming out behind me, he held the inner door for her. So, it's just these little things that just go above and beyond
Mm-hmm.
off the path of least resistance that really have a huge impact on people.
Mm-hmm.
We're living in a pretty cold and callous world, both literally and metaphorically right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so any act of kindness like that really makes a difference.
Good.
Eileen,
Just talking about opening the door for someone at the gym where my husband and I go, everyone opens the door for each other. And I think it's contagious. I mean, I wasn't there at the beginning when the first person opened the door for the first person. But now, no matter what, someone always opens the door for you. And that generates such a wonderful feeling of friendliness and care.
awesome. That's a nice culture to be a part of. Sue,
Ditto. We do the same thing in our gym.
Yeah.
So, Greg, when you mentioned, opening doors, and that's what we do, and
Yeah.
especially when it's so cold, and just opening the door. And I did that this week, actually. I didn't, it's not always that everybody opens it for everybody, but I consciously thought about opening the door and smiling and saying good morning.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a huge difference. And it's a great act of loving kindness. And it's so simple, really.
yeah. And it's a great way of being mindful as well. I mean, you talked about being conscious and smiling and all of these things, and that brings you into yourself. Um, all right, so let's take this a little bit deeper. Let's look at a reading. I've skipped ahead a little bit. There's the slideshow. Okay, so can I have someone to please read the first bullet?
I'll read. Often translated as loving kindness, Hesed refers to acts of benevolence that one does out of kindness, not out of any obligation.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Pete. Uh, we're talking about loving kindness, and it's kind of our practice in the American Mussar class to use the English words. But loving kindness is, we're really talking about chesed when we're doing this. And so, what do you notice about Tamara Khan Ashkenazi's definition of chesed? What contrast is she bringing? Frank, I see your hand up. I don't know if it was for this question or something else, but if you, no, okay. Frank's waving me off. Okay, we're good. But what is she contrasting? Yeah, Peter.
Yeah, she's contrasting the uh, kindness is not done out of any obligation.
Yeah, yeah. And in Jewish practice, okay, let's hear from Bonnie first.
I'm fascinated that she used the word benevolence, which I haven't heard since reading in the 1800s about benevolent societies. She doesn't say referring to acts, period, that or actions, which is I think we would have said. I'm so curious to know if you have any insight as to why she used that word. It's a very old-fashioned word
I don't.
because she
No.
could have simply said chesed refers to actions that does not that one does out of kindness, not out of obligation. So there must be something more for her or for us that I'm missing.
Well, benevolence, as I understand it, is kind of an act of good or an act of goodwill towards someone else. So it's not like random acts.
Right. I
Um,
re I remember my mother telling me that my great grandfather was head up of the Chevra Kadisha,
mhm,
and so it was called a benevolent society.
mhm.
So, but to use it in I don't know when this was written, um, but it's
Within the
interesting.
last 20 years.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that she used that term.
Susan, what would you like to add?
I'm not answering Bonnie. Sorry about that. I was thinking also that this has left out the idea that we don't expect to have anything returned, that we don't expect compensation for that kindness.
Yes, yes. This definition is not complete, in my opinion. So for sure. What I think is interesting, though, is she is contrasting kindness and obligation. And what comes to mind is some of you may be aware that it is obligatory in traditional Jewish practice to give to charity. It's called tzedakah, and it is obligatory to give between 10 and 20% of your, income. You can argue whether that's before tax or after tax or whatever, but that's obligatory. That's obligatory giving to the needy. And it's a good thing to do, and it's an important thing to do, but this is a different category. Um, let's go to the second bullet. May I have someone to read that?
Very well.
Thank you.
The Genesis story depicts God creating the world with a great act of chesed. Out of the void, we were gifted a world filled with light and all kinds of creatures. We were created in God's image and through God clothing Adam and Eve.
Okay, so let's pause there and we'll read the third bullet next. But what's going on here? It's talking about the Genesis story and creation. And what are some of the things you notice about this framing that Rabbi Perlman and Mars, Michelle Perlman and Sharon Mars are doing?
If I may continue and
Please.
rebound on what was said before, it's sort of an extreme example of benevolence because however you see God or the universe, as you put it in your book, um, that was not something that was obligatory. It was something that was done, whether consciously by an entity or happened. But the result is that's where I see benevolence too. The result is something positive for someone else. That's where I see benevolence. And what is positive for us is this world filled with everything that we need and even more than we need, not just, as we discussed, bread and water, but all the fruits of creation, all the beauty around us, and all of that was a gift to us, and we can take it as an example of what we can bring to things that are not always neither obligatory nor necessary in the sense of indispensable, but things that are pluses and make bonuses, if you want, and make the world better because we bring them.
Yeah, so thank you, Nico. And one thing I'm gathering out of what you're saying is, I think if I understand it correctly, is if we can appreciate the world as a gift, it was not obliged. It did not have to be, if we believe in a creator, the creator didn't have to do it. But even if we didn't, we can still look at like this beautiful world as a gift that we have, and perhaps that can inspire us to do other things. Great, so let's have another reader, and maybe someone we haven't heard from yet is invited to read this third bullet. Harry, are you up for that? I don't know what screen you're on, but you're in the center of my view.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The Talmud says, just as God's clothes the naked, so should we clothe the naked. Words from Chesed, we follow the divine's example here on earth, creating our own relationships, new worlds with acts of Chesed. Rabbi Michelle Perlman and Rabbi Sharon Mars, Mussar Torah commentary.
Thank you. So what does it mean creating our own relationships and new worlds with acts of chesed? Yeah, Nico. And then
I realized I kind of jumped the gun on what I said just before because it applies more to this. Just like the world was created in an act of chesed and benevolence, every time we do an act with benevolence and do an act of loving kindness, it's like we create a whole new world and a better world, even with a small contribution.
Yeah. Yeah. As a matter of fact, a lot of modern Jewish teachings see humans as co-creators in the act of creation. And so, yeah, that's very much in line with that. Bonnie and then Frank.
Can you put the quote up again just because I didn't have it in the chat, but I wanted to refer to it.
Yeah.
So I mentioned this last week that I had the privilege of teaching the Panim El Panim program for 5 of the 10 years, every other year. And the piece that just struck me then and strikes me so much now is we're created in God's image. And in that, we have, I believe, a responsibility to do to the world and to the people of the world what God does in terms of Gimilut Chasadim and Tzedek as, as a big circle of things that go into that. And
Gimilu Chasadim, meaning acts of chesed,
acts of
acts of loving
right,
kindness.
of loving kindness. And here we have this responsibility because we are created in God's image, and that takes it to creating relationships and new worlds within it, making our world better physically, doing something about the lack of ice for the polar bears and what it's affecting us. I just love these two quotes and having them together. The first one I read independently, and I thought it was missing things, and then the second one goes back to Talmudic sayings, and to me, it's integrated.
Thank you. Frank.
Um, for many years, I've noticed that doing the right thing is contagious, and somebody mentioned that, and I totally agree. I think we learn from others. I remember for years and years I sang little old ladies. I don't know if it's a little old men, but little old ladies cleaning their curb. And guess what? I noticed myself doing the same thing.
Hmm.
Or we learn to stand up for the elderly on the bus. I take the bus at least once or twice a week. People do that now.
Hmm.
They didn't do it always. So I think that when we do something, and I think that's what they mean over here. Uh, I mean, that to me is the translation. Is the idea is that when we do the right thing, we bring light into the world. We do. And
Yeah.
when we do something wrong, either purposefully or even by mistake, then we cause darkness
Mhm.
and division.
Yeah. And I love the way you kind of imply that like standing up for an elderly person and giving their seat is creating a new world. It's creating a new world on that bus. Maybe that world lasts only 5 minutes. Maybe it lasts a lifetime for someone, but um, and we unfortunately can also create darkness when we by mistake or by in person. Yeah. But I think about Sue's story, she said, I don't know who the first person was that held the door. Who was the creator of that world? We don't know. Was there a creator? We don't know. We might imply there's a creator because we see all these acts of chesed that are going on and a place where people behave in a certain way. It's like, yeah, well, maybe there was someone who kind of started all of this. Um, so it's pretty interesting stuff. All right, I think it is time for us to head to breakout rooms. Our question for today is, so we were talking about, we sort of touched on emulating the divine for whatever that might mean to you or the spirit of the universe. But if you were inspired to kind of invoke kindness, where would you invoke it? Or to what might kindness lead you to create? Something, sorry, how might kindness lead you to create something small that would impact another person? And how might you enact that kindness towards yourself?
Color enhancements enabled.
So you won't be able to talk about all of these things, but it's really with this idea of we are creators. Um, we've had an example of a creation through kindness, either from God or from our literature. It doesn't, you don't even need to believe in God to say, here was a set of literature, here's a set of books that have something to teach us. I'm going to open the breakout rooms. I'll have a good 10 minutes or so. Let me see what we have here. Okay, the
Make up
rooms are
rooms.
open. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had really good conversations. I would love to hear. I brought us back a little bit early, maybe earlier than you wanted to come back, even, because I wanted us to have some time to unpack and share what you talked about and maybe share some ideas for small acts that you could do to bring more kindness into your world, to create a kinder world. Yes, Nico.
First, I want to thank the person I was talking to. I'm not going to mention by name because it was, a personal conversation, but it was very interesting, and thank you so much. Um, I would say we both agreed that we would love to have maybe I don't know if it's possible, an extra session about loving kindness, because even though we talked about being kind to strangers and bringing light in the world and a little bit about being kind to ourselves, we didn't mention something that we both thought was very important, was that being kind to the person closest to us, because we both felt it was
Hmm.
way harder and took way more effort to be present and be very kind and be extra kind to your spouse or your kids or the persons who are around you every day on a daily basis.
Mm.
When you come home and just relax and, feel you're in your safe space, etc., and sort of not only drop your guard, but also your best behavior that you present to the world when you go out in the world. And that it's way easier to us, at least, maybe not to everyone, to be nice and on our best behaviors with
You don't know.
than it is with the people that are around you all the time, in a way.
Yeah,
And that
let
was
me think about that. I took a couple notes. That's a fascinating question, and I totally recognize the phenomenon. I think most of us have done it in one way or another over the years. And um, yeah, and I don't know how if Mussar has addressed that. So I'm gonna put some thought into that. Wendy.
Oh, we had a little list of like things we could do, maybe like new.
Mhm.
Um, and one was a lot like Nico's, but we didn't mention who they were. Um, is oh, just being aware of others around you and paying attention, and then just giving them like of yourself in loving kindness.
Mm.
Like if you have a job and you're working in a grocery store and you have a customer, then you just actually take that moment. So that's kind of close to you, and you go, but not like you were saying. And then the other one was, and I like this one the best is recognizing and sharing that recognition with others when you have been uh, the recipient of loving kindness and
Mm.
thanking them. And that's very important, I think. And that could
Yeah,
be
I
something that would
think
be
so.
contagious too.
Yeah. And also agreeing to accept help. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago too. And I talked about that
Mm.
in the sermon. And, um, if we're all like, can I help you with that? No, no, I've got it. Okay, well, that's also in a way creating the world. If the world's, built on loving kindness, but if someone tries to put a brick in and you slap it down, that doesn't help the cause at all. Oh yeah, I could go on and on about that. It's like I don't want a world of loving kindness. I want a world of stubborn independence
Mm.
and stubborn stumbling along on my own and ordering some crap from DoorDash instead of the home cooked meal that my friend wanted to bring over because I was sick. Um, Michael.
Maybe jumping off of that just a little bit, one thought that occurred to me as I was thinking about this question is that when I share my journey and my failings with other people, it often gives them a platform to share their pain and their failings with me, and that creates community
Hmm.
maybe more deeply than if I share my successes.
Hmm.
Um, and that isn't necessarily about asking for help because it may be relating to something that happened to me 5 years ago, but it's a way to share common humanity because we all struggle and we all fail. And when we
Yeah.
do that and we share that together, we can create community.
Love that. Thank you, Michael. Sue.
Well, I was wondering if Beth would share that great story you told with the parking attendant because it was beautiful.
Okay. I was going to a restaurant in a hotel to have breakfast with a friend earlier this week. And I'm sorry, I apologize to everybody in the Midwest and the East. I live in San Diego. It was a gorgeous day. And I'm walking up the driveway, and there are these flower beds. And I get up a little higher around the pillar, and there's a fountain. And his valet parking station is directly opposite the fountain. And he's not busy, there's no cars to park. And so I walk up to him and I say, "Do you work in the most beautiful place in the world?" And he says, "Yes. Isn't this?" I said, "Yeah, yeah." We admired the flowers and the fountain and what have you. And he pulls out his phone and he says, "Yeah, look at this." And he shows me a picture of the sunrise. And he says, "I get to see this every morning," because he works the morning shift. And
Wow.
so, like, we both enjoyed how blessed we are by
Mm.
God's beauty around us. And, in a service job, you can have a customer that's kind of grumpy and kind of turns your day sour, but we both walked away from that interchange feeling good and blessed by God.
Good. Well, I want to just thank you so much for sharing that. I want to just give us in our last minute or two, there's a few people we haven't heard from, and you don't need to say anything if you don't wish to, but I want to just create a little bit of space for Carolyn or Dave or Nancy or Guy. Again, I'm mildly putting you on the spot. I apologize, but it's just giving you an opportunity. No need to participate if you don't have anything you'd like to add or feel comfortable adding. Okay, well, anyone else? Would anyone else like to add one more comment before we close? Yes, Susan.
Sorry, thank you. I loved your story, Beth, and in a small way, mine is related. That's something I have worked on for a long time is very often I am on a mission. I'm in the store because I have to do something. I'm at the doctor's office. I have to see the doctor. And what I have been working on in terms of loving kindness for the last while has been that recognition of the person behind the desk, learning the names of the people in the office, chatting with the person who is at the cash register or wherever I am to just, slow down. That part of the mission is recognizing other people's humanity and then turning that back on myself and saying, you're not the robot on a mission. You're not just trying to accomplish your tasks, but to slow down and, to experience my own humanity and whatever it is I need that day or whatever it is I'm feeling that day as well. But to, make that kind of a connection.
Wow, thank you so much, Susan. What a wonderful note to end on. Let's all relax and close our eyes for a nice closing meditation. Taking a nice leisurely inhale through the nose, and then a nice leisurely exhale through the mouth. And allow that question inspired by what Susan shared. What is it that you need right now? Stepping away from the task focus, from the to-do list. As a human being opening your heart towards yourself. What is it that you need? What might you do to give it to yourself? What is it okay to let go of for the moment in order to give that to yourself? And how does creating a better world for yourself create a better world? We take a moment of gratitude for those souls who have shared this journey with us today. As we close our sacred space. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes.